Hi, everyone, and welcome to the USA Today Live. We are dissecting all things the life of a showgirl celebrating Taylor Swift's 12th era. I am so excited about this panel. In fact, this might be worth the 13 minutes of sleep overnight from listening to the album, doing live hits, writing stories. This panel is amazing. We have Kayla Wong. She is the data Swiftie. She knows everything when it comes to songs, lyrics, tracks. She's been looking into all the text, all the poetry that Taylor has produced. We also have Sarah Chappelle. She is the style Swiftie. She's been blogging about Taylor's closet for the past about 13 years. She also is a New York Times bestseller. So I'm excited to talk to her about the aesthetic and the fashion when it comes to a showgirl era. We have Alia Buttleman. She is the CEO, one of the CEOs for Phase It Glitter Patches. A lot of you are familiar with the company. Taylor wore those to a game and her business skyrocketed overnight. We're going to be talking to her just about what this showgirl era means and how she is changing the business to reflect showgirls everywhere. And then we have Tyler Conroy. He is a TikTok influencer. If you don't know him, you have to follow him. He's hilarious and funny. He has great reaction videos. And he is most known or most famous for being the one to first say, "Where are you going, Taylor?" on the Eras Tour. That's now something we all say. But let's get started first with our data Swiftie. Hi, Kayla. Tell me
Hi,
first, what are
Brian.
your initial thoughts? What do you think of the album?
I love the album. I thought it was going to be pop banger after pop banger, right? It's the way she talked about it in the podcast. It was a Max Martin Shellback record, too. And I think it really delivered up against my expectations. I don't think I told you this yet. My favorite is actually Honey of the full album. And I think I love Elizabeth Taylor, too. That's probably number two. It's taken me a second to put a full ranking together, but that was like my initial take on it.
Well, Elizabeth Taylor's the hook that's been stuck in my head all night and all morning about Elizabeth. I'm not going to sing. That would be disastrous. So this album, though, does feel like a love letter to Travis Kelce. Can you tell me how many of these tracks it looks like are for him?
7 of 12 is what I would say. There's always a little bit of interpretation in there. Sometimes people, may take it a different way or think there's double meanings. But I think the most obvious answer would be 7 of 12. So that's all of them excluding Father Figure, Ruin the Friendship, Actually Romantic, which that was surprising because I thought that was going to be a Travis song. And then Canceled and title track, The Life of a Showgirl, also not about Travis.
Well, one of the big talkers is kind of their next era. She does reference, marriage. She references possibly having a family. How does that compare to her past albums? And what have you noticed looking back through other songs in her discography?
She has talked about marriage either directly or through marriage imagery as a metaphor for a while. But if you think about her most recent albums, right, Tortured Poets through Midnights, it was really kind of sad, right? Kind of pessimistic. In Midnights, like the opening track being Lavender Haze about her essentially saying she doesn't want marriage. Then you flash forward to this album where she explicitly kind of addresses that and says that, she said that and she was lying, and presumably that's just because she didn't necessarily think that was on the table in previous situations. And so she had convinced herself that that wasn't something that she wanted anyway. And then you also have songs like Wish List, which not directly saying the word marriage, but obviously that's, related to her now maybe wanting to settle down, have a traditional life with a traditional family. And then she also has In Wood, which is not necessarily the most, it's a very explicit song, but
I like to say wood is a euphemism for wood.
yes. But even in that, she does address marriage, right? Like she has the hard rock ring analogy, and still makes it kind of like a sentimental, kind of a sweet song, even though obviously, there are other things about it too that people are probably going to fixate on a little bit more.
One of the lyrics that really cut deep that made me take pause is the last time Taylor, I feel like, talked about marriage was "You're Losing Me" when she said, "I wouldn't marry me either, a pathological people pleaser." And then on this album, An Eldest Daughter, you have her not only saying that she vows for Travis in the future, but also kind of her entire outlook on marriage has changed. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's changed or it's just that she was kind of tabling different desires in the wrong relationships, right? Because I think that a lot of people do that, and I think that a lot of people see themselves in her when she sings about maybe not wanting something originally, and then she comes back and she says, okay, I'm going to contradict myself. That's not actually what I meant. But it's interesting because I was also watching some of the interviews, like the radio shows she was doing this morning, and I don't even think I'm fully caught up on like all the content there is out there right now because there's so much that I went up to. She also had mentioned that she didn't necessarily think in detail about like what her wedding would look like until she found that right person. So I think there are probably some ways in which she saw it as this fairy tale that she did kind of always want and aspire to have, but then there are also things that she would block herself from thinking about related to marriage and wanting that lifestyle until she felt safe enough to do so.
Now, you are the Data Swiftie. If anyone wants to follow you, it's at headfirstfearless on Instagram. But I say that because what are the most common words on this album? You usually have these stats available the next day.
Yes. So the most common words in this album, and this excludes what we call stop words, which is the and, like words that would kind of always be at the top. So taking those out, the top 5 words, number 1 is want, number 2 is never, number 3 is like, number 4 is now, and number 5 is a tie between got and no.
Yeah. Are there any brand new words?
There are, like infamy is one that comes to mind. I don't think she's used that one before. What's also interesting is that she uses a lot of, I don't know if it's all slang, but it's kind of more casual, like internet language with like boss up and trolling and memes and some of that stuff, which is interesting. I also like watching how she weaves that with really dated imagery too, right? Like referencing Hamlet, referencing Elizabeth Taylor, who's like this previous Hollywood icon, and then putting much more modern language in with that is an interesting thing to me.
Kayla, thank you so much for joining us.